The sport we love, college football, is changing on us every single day. But between conference realignment, the transfer portal being like chaos, major NIL deals being given to players, pay for play basically happening, and now there are rule changes going to take place that will make the game we love look different on Saturday. I'm going to talk about those rule changes, tell you what they are and what I think about them. I'm also going to tell you about some NIL legislation that could drastically impact recruiting and obtaining players via the transfer portal. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz. Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull that chair up and let me serve you up this shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are talking NIL legislation that's taking place in two different states, Colorado and Oklahoma. And we're going to talk about some rule changes that are going to impact college football games that we watch on Saturday. First, I'm sure the NIL piece is probably what you all want to hear about the most. So I'm going to talk about that first. Now, I first ran across this information when I was looking at some to see what Dennis Dodd was tweeting out about today, because I was expecting some news about conference realignment or about the Big 12 potentially. But I found this instead. He had retweeted a piece by someone named Dan Green, or a tweet by Dan Green, regarding NIL legislation in the state of Colorado. And I'm going to share that tweet with you on the screen so you can read along. But it says, and this is Dan Green's tweet, Colorado has introduced a bill to amend its NIL law by adding that, one, schools may identify, create, solicit, facilitate NIL deals so long as they get the athlete's consent and they inform the athlete within 72 hours. And two, charitable groups may compensate athletes for their NIL. Now, as you can see, he attached a bill to the tweet to prove what he's saying is accurate. Now, this bill has just been introduced. It hasn't passed yet, but there's a good likelihood that it will. But the way I interpret this is schools will now be able to take a more active role in helping their student athletes get NIL deals. Right now, the way I understand NIL is that schools can only basically help fundraise. They can't dictate where the money goes because of Title IX. You know, they can't pick certain players. They can't pick certain even sports programs. All they can do is help raise money, say for an NIL collective, so to speak. Okay. For example, West Virginia has Country Roads Trust. The athletic department can help raise money for Country Roads Trust, but then that's pretty much all they can do. They have to wipe their hands of it at that point. They have to let Country Roads Trust handle the rest, which isn't, and Country Roads Trust is a separate entity on their own. That's basically the way I understand NIL has been up to this point. But now there are states passing laws, their own laws, that are changing this. And what that's going to do is give the schools in these states recruiting advantages over the schools that are not in these states. I think California has passed some NIL laws that are pretty loose. And now, obviously, Colorado is looking at one. And there's one also in Oklahoma that I found out about through this research that is even further along than the one in Colorado. I got this information from an article in On3 that I'm also going to share with you. And this article is titled, Oklahoma Legislature Sends Transformative NIL Bill to Governor, written by Jeremy Crabtree from On3. It says, Oklahoma's transformative name, image, and likeness bill is now on Governor Kevin Stitt's desk. In early April, the Oklahoma House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed Senate Bill 840. On Thursday, the sweeping bill, sponsored by Senate Greg McCourtney, breezed through the Oklahoma Senate with a vote of 29-12. Supporters say the bill levels the playing field for Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Tulsa, and other colleges when recruiting and retaining student athletes who also want to capitalize off NIL. The bill was written in consultation with OU and other state athletic departments, according to Rep. John Eccles, who's SB 840 sponsor in the House. Oklahoma lawmakers say the current law puts the Sooners, Cowboys, and other state athletic teams at a disadvantage. For instance, Oklahoma's requirement that individuals representing athletes in NIL matters be attorneys or registered agents is deemed too limiting. Why am I passing this bill? Eccles said when arguing the bill. Because if we don't, we need to go ahead and shut down OU and OSU athletics. Not passing this is tantamount to saying we no longer wish to compete on the collegiate level. It has gotten to that level. What we are doing is setting the same level playing field that everyone else has to play on. Local political and national NIL observers said they expect Stitt to sign the bill. That's especially true after neighboring Arkansas revamped its NIL law in mid-April to allow schools and fundraising foundations to source NIL deals for athletes. The Arkansas bill also gives all 501c3 collectives, including athletics fundraising foundations, the right to enter into deals with athletes. Texas legislators are also considering revamped legislation. House Bill 2804. That's similar to what was passed in Arkansas and is now on the governor's desk in Oklahoma. So, what's in Oklahoma's SB 840? According to a revised bill summary published on Tuesday, some of SB 840's biggest changes are SB 840 repeals the requirement that representation must be licensed or registered. So, you don't have to use an agent, basically, is what that's saying. At least that's how I interpret it. The bill prohibits a student from using a school's logo to secure NIL compensation, which that's pretty common. It allows a college or university to be compensated for the use of its logo or facilities in relation to NIL activities. The bill allows a college to establish agreements with a third-party entity to facilitate NIL activities on its behalf. This part of the bill received a lot of attention after the 12th Man Plus Fund was launched at Texas A&M in February. A&M and Arkansas are believed to be the first schools whose official booster organization also is directly fundraising for NIL opportunities for student athletes. Now, that would basically be like, for West Virginia fans, that would be like the Mountaineer Athletic Club directly fundraising for NIL. Right now, the only entity that can do that is Country Roads Trust, which is an NIL collective separate from the university. SB 840 also allows colleges to require student athletes to take courses in contracts and financial literacy. Now, that's smart anyway. They should be doing that anyway, in my opinion. And additionally, the bill allows colleges and universities to adopt reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to prevent a student's NIL activities from interfering with team activities, school operations, and the use of school facilities. The bill could provide protection from NIL violations. Most interestingly, though, legal experts say SB 840 also appears to provide cover for the schools from being punished by the NCAA for any NIL-related violations, including any committed by collectives that have been set up to support student athletes through deal facilitation. Now, this here to me is the biggest piece of this. I'm going to read this to you again. Most legal experts say the bill appears to provide cover for Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Tulsa from being punished by the NCAA for any NIL-related violations, including any committed by collectives that have been set up to support student athletes through deal facilitation. Here's what the bill actually says. A collegiate athletic association shall not authorize its member institutions to entertain a complaint, open an investigation, or take any other adverse action against a post-secondary institution for engaging in any activity protected in the Student Athlete Name, Image, and Likeness Rights Act, or for involvement in student athlete name, image, or likeness activities, end quote. Coaches and NCAA leaders say NIL sometimes disguises pay-for-play deals choreographed by collectives ahead of when student athletes sign binding national letters of intent or before they enter the transfer portal. Per NCAA rules, boosters are not allowed to pay players directly or be part of the recruiting process. And the organization says it is actively investigating multiple bad actors in the NIL space. Oklahoma and Crimson and Cream are the primary collectives at OU. Pokes with a Purpose is the officially endorsed collective at OSU. Additionally, Hurricane Impact was recently launched in Tulsa. So, how will the NCAA react? Here's a quote. If passed, it would raise a lot of questions about the NCAA's ability to enforce regulations in Oklahoma. John Holden, an associate professor at Oklahoma State that specializes in the rights of student athletes, told On3. This would be a significant step in changing the face of college sports if passed and schools choose to act on the protection. It does not appear to directly shield athletes, though. While this seems like a bold step to protect school autonomy, you do not have to look too far into the past to see that NCAA was unpleased when California passed the original legislation giving college athletes NIL rights. I suspect there will be similar concerns here. So basically, I'm not going to read the rest of this. This is very long. It's kind of a long article here. I'll link to it in the description box. But basically what we have here, folks, schools will be able to help facilitate NIL deals for students. And in Oklahoma, at least, they are going to be protected. The schools themselves will be protected from NCAA violations. Think about that. They will basically be able to go out and poach players from other schools and not get in trouble for it. Now, the players might still get in trouble, but the schools won't. Folks, I'm telling you, that will change the game. Now, I didn't see in Colorado's bill, I didn't see that specific language about being protected from the NCAA in Colorado's bill. But if it's not, they'll probably add it or at least do an amendment to it to add that or do it later, you're going to start seeing other states doing the same thing. And at some point, you're going to have every state in the country passing these types of bills unless the federal government steps up and does something about it, which they so far have failed to do and don't seem to be interested in doing anything about it, to be honest. This is stripping what little power the NCAA has left away from them when it comes to NIL, at least in these specific states. And I'm sure the NCAA is not happy with this. But unless they want to fight long court battles in these states, I don't know what they can do about it. I really don't. So let me know in the comments what you think about this. Now, let's move on to the next thing I want to talk about. College football rule changes coming as early as 2023. Now, I saw this on a tweet from Dennis Dodd, and once again, I will share this with you. Dennis Dodd put out this tweet. Breaking. For the first time since 1968, clocks will no longer stop on first down in NCAA games. PROP approves rule changes for all except, surprisingly, Division III, which pushed back. And now I'm going to open the article that he was tweeting about. As you see here, it says, clocks will run after first downs in college football with NCAA set to change half-century-old rule Friday. And, of course, that tweet indicated that they did make that change. The NCAA is expected to approve today rules changes proposed earlier this year that will allow the clock to run after first downs are achieved in all divisions except Division III. The clock will continue to stop after first downs during the final 2 minutes of each half. So this is basically adopting the NFL rule that currently exists. The approval will come from the Playing Rules Oversight Panel, that's prop that I mentioned in the tweet, or that Dennis mentioned in his tweet, that annually vets rules changes as proposed by the NCAA Football Rules Committee, which made this recommendation in March. Stopping the clock after first downs has been one of the rules that has differentiated college football from the NFL since 1968. Allowing the clock to run is expected to reduce the number of plays by an average of 7 per game, according to Steve Shaw, secretary-editor of the Rules Committee. The PROP is also expected to approve 2 other recommendations from the Rules Committee. Teams be prohibited from calling consecutive timeouts, which basically will take away icing the kicker, 2 or 3 times in a row, and penalties at the end of the first and third quarter being enforced on the first play of the next quarter. We all know there's a rule if there's a defensive penalty at the end of a quarter, offense gets an untimed down, they're doing away from that. It will just carry over to the next quarter. So what does this mean? Well, it looks to me like they're maybe making an effort to speed up the game, make the games not last quite as long, because we all know sometimes on Saturdays you're watching a college football game for 3.5, even up to 4 hours sometimes. Between all the clock stoppages, official timeouts for commercial breaks, things like that. I mean, games last 3.5, 4 hours. I mean, it takes up half of your day, right? This, I think, is an effort maybe to speed that up. Or, like some skeptics are saying, and I kind of maybe lean this way, maybe they're just going to keep the game time the same, but make time for even more commercials. I hope that's not the case, because we do need to get shortened these games. And another thing, you could be looking at this, or they could be looking at this from a safety perspective. 7 less plays per game for a team doesn't sound like a lot. But you add that over in the entirety of a season, it's about 84 less plays a game for every team and every player on that team, potentially. And that's 84 less hits they have to take to the head. All right. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section about these rule changes and about the NIL legislation taking place in Colorado and Oklahoma and Texas and these other states. Do you think this is ruined? First off, on the rule changes, do you think those rule changes are going to ruin watching the game on Saturday, or do you think it's a good idea because we don't need all of these clock stoppages? I want to hear your thoughts. Also on the NIL stuff, do you think this is going to be good for the game, bad for the game? And what do you think this means? Do you think this will speed up the federal government and forcing them to do something? I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. Folks, if you don't mind, please support me here on the channel. You can do it for free by liking, commenting, and subscribing. You can share it with your friends. You can check out the links in the description box of all the other ways you can support me financially. If you want to check out another video on college football news, you can click this link right here. And until the next episode of Couz's Corner, Q Country Roads.